Animism is about living in relationship with all that is, and that includes the mysterious and unknown things. On today's podcast, I speak with Leslie and Stephen Shaw, authors of Who Are They and What Are They Up To? Both of my guests have experienced seeing unidentified flying objects or unidentified aerial phenomenon, as it's now called. And Stephen is an experiencer of lost time and abduction. Last summer, the United States government finally admitted that these crafts are real, and today we're going to speak with someone who has had contact with these beings since childhood. If the show inspires you, informs you, amuses you, please consider supporting by liking, sharing, or subscribing, or commenting, because that's how our channel grows and can be found by others. Thanks. Welcome, Leslie and Stephen. How are you?
We're just super. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I asked you here because I'm really interested in hearing your stories about encounters with aliens. So, who wants to start?
Well, I guess I will.
It started with his early life.
Yeah, my early life. Sorry, I'm just getting over a frog here. Uh,
And
I used to be visited by a little being that would jump when I was 3 years old, that would jump on my chest and playfully during the night. And I just didn't think very much of it. I grew up in a very psychic family, three generations, and we had this family spirit guide called Old Glegley that would visit people. So I grew up, thinking and believing that as a kid. And then when I was 9 years old, I was sleeping in a bunk bed and I got up out of the bunk bed because I heard something strange going on in the house. It wasn't the dog, and it was kind of dark, and I was walking down the hallway. My heart was pounding. I was absolutely awake, and then I black out, and then I'm back in my bed.
that
And
kind of thing just kept happening
this,
again and
yeah,
again
it
through
happened
their
to my
lives.
my brother and who was younger than me.
Mhm.
And then fast forward when I was 18, a series of events that happened that culminated in my being approached by this blue-white being about 6 to 7 feet tall that came from behind my head from the front door. I was sleeping on the couch and it illuminated the whole room with blue-white light and stopped by my right side, paralyzed the right side of my body, just like this went. I couldn't move no matter what I want to do. I just couldn't move. And it bent down and said in my ear, "Hi, Steve." Couldn't tell male or female. Now, and then I don't know what it stayed for a little period of time, then it left. Now, about 6 hours later, I went to go, reach in my right hand side pocket to pull out some coins because my dad and I were getting hungry and for lunch. So I pulled out all the coins in the right side of my pocket and they were all magnetized. I could pick up the coins with each other. And my dad and I looked at each other and said, well, that's not possible.
It's supposed
You
to
know,
be impossible because
so
they design coins specifically so they're not magnetic, so they can go in Coke machines and Pepsi machines.
and this time period in 1979 January, my sister, my dad, and I were all experiencing things together or separately. And it sounds like a haunting, but sometimes, but when
There's
it go
always this missing
there's
time,
always
this
this
chunk
missing
of missing
time.
time.
My brother was afraid of the men that would visit him in the night and slept in our closet for a good 2 years.
And he, one time, Philip, his brother Philip, saw a gray alien in his room
A different house.
before blacking out. So at first we didn't know what the phenomenon was, but after interviewing Philip, I realized what's going on. It's the abduction phenomenon, because that's the hallmark of the abduction phenomenon is big blocks of missing time. You'll see something strange and then black out, and then 3 hours later, wake up in your bed. Frequently the case. And it was happening to the whole family.
And we only talked about it amongst the family because my parents came over from England. They grew up as children during World War II, and my mother's mother and her sister were extremely psychic, doing automatic writing and spiritualism stuff. And then their mothers came from Germany and the Newmans that were also into that and had the ability. I've seen things that my mom had written automatic writing when she called it the feeling would come over her that there's no possible way she could have known.
Yes, in
That's
fact, she would be notified via automatic writing of deaths in the family long before the official word would come from England. she'd say, "Oh, my mother's dead," or so and so.
Yeah, I remember picking me up from school when I was 9, and she was in tears because she got the feeling, and she was contacted, and I saw. I said, "Yeah." And I said, "My mom just died. I was told by my spirit guide, Old Glegley."
Hmm.
So
But
So do
we
you
think the
think that,
spirit guide might be an alien abduction
I was
phenomenon
going to
more.
say, do you think that that's related?
Oh, yes,
You do.
yes, very much so. I
very
mean,
much
I
so.
don't, I don't, the blue white being that approached me, and my dad saw an intense wall of blue white light outside of my bedroom door one night
A different
around this
night.
time
Yeah.
period, a different night, and he was going to get up and investigate what is that blue white light all around the door. And a voice came in his head, said, "Jeffrey, go back to sleep.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine." And he went back to sleep. And I have no recollection of that at all. Okay. That night that my room was filled with blue white light, that particular night, I have no recollection.
And so we get married, and I hear all about these incidents from Stephen, and I believe him. I'm a dutiful wife, and I believe what he tells me. But there was always that little kernel of doubt, and maybe I believed him 95%, say. And then I saw my first UFO, and now I believed him 100% after that, because seeing is believing for sure. We've seen five. He's seen five total, and I've seen two. And the two we saw together. So his last two were my only two.
So,
And
Leslie, have you ever been abducted?
no, I don't think so.
Oh,
But
mean Leslie?
yeah, I don't believe so. I think they abandoned Steve as a abduction subject, um,
Well,
maybe before I met him. You see, this is what they do. They'll take people, they find a certain genetic strain that they like, and then they'll take that person again and again and again through their lives, and then they abandon them and start taking their children and grandchildren. So I think they're after viable genetic material. And we were in our late 30s when we got together, and I think they may have been abandoned us already. But Whitley Strieber, the guy who wrote Communion, he reported being taken right next to his sleeping wife, and her not knowing anything about it. But he would know, because
Mhm.
he would partially awaken through it and as he's being taken, and just she's just sleeping and oblivious to it. So we think they have consciousness dampening fields that they can keep people asleep while they're doing what they're doing. So he could have been taken right next to me, and I wouldn't have known it. Or I could have been taken and I just have no memory of it. They're good at capping memories.
Mhm.
Uh, for instance, Stephen's memory block for all these big chunks of missing time, we've tried to break through it in hypnotic regression work and have failed so far. The block is in pretty good place. Sometimes it's hard to break through them.
Have you ever been harmed?
have I ever been harmed?
Hmm.
Well, we
No.
consider the
Well, I
trauma
mean,
of being stolen out of your beds at night
Sure.
harm.
psychologically, yes. I mean, I've had trouble sleeping for a long time,
Yes,
and I,
chronic
I've
insomnia.
I've for a while there, I would try to get to sleep and just relax, and then it would always hear like a knock, knock, knock behind my head, like on the wall, just like somebody's like knocking, said like wake up, or I get somebody talking in my ear, or
Yeah.
I'd hear a door slam, just like the door of the room I was in, just slammed. Or sometimes I'll hear
Yeah.
musical instruments, it's something that, you know, like I say, I grew up in a family that was kind of conservative British, and we knew about this stuff. And this stuff has followed me to at least six different houses.
Yes,
And
it's
it's
not like a haunting that would
yeah,
be at a location or
right. And
something.
it's followed my family from England and probably Germany too, as I would imagine. And it also crossed over to my mom's older sister got married to Doug Griffiths, and he was approached by O'Glegley, and he's not bloodline at all of Shaw. He's Griffiths, right? He was when he was in the RAF in Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. He was approached by this O'Glegley character and woke him up out of a dead sleep and said, "You got to get out of your cot. You're about to be attacked." And he took him seriously, and he got out of the cot and got out of that tent, and sure enough, a group of warriors came through and killed a bunch of them. So So in other words,
It's
this
like they protect the family
they
too.
protect the family. So, but yes, it's something I grew up with. I didn't talk to my friends about it because they already thought I was a little strange as it was because I played the accordion, so they already thought I was a little strange. So yeah, it's just one of these things that it was kept in the family, and you just don't talk about these things. They think you're a little weird.
So why are you
Well,
talking
you are,
about,
darling. Sorry.
why are you
You were
talking about
saying?
it now?
Oh, pardon, what was the question?
Why are you talking about it now?
Oh, well, I'm 63 years old and I've I had an incident happen when I was 30 that really, really disturbed and scared me. I was married to my ex-wife. We were living in a second story condo, really nice place. And she was a school teacher and she's getting ready to go to school. She'd take like 2 hours to get ready to go to school. And I was still in bed. Again, it was January, it was dark, and I heard this sound of a Harley Davidson being revved up down in the courtyard. You can't mistake a Harley Davidson, okay? And so I got up out of bed and says, "Who the hell is this? Is revving a Harley Davidson
At
in
5
the
a.m.
dark? Like at 6 o'clock in the morning in the dark." And there was nobody there. So I went back and said, "That was really odd. Maybe he was on the street." So I started to go back to sleep. Then it happened again. And I said, "Oh, this is ridiculous." And then it was like a veil broke across my subconscious and conscious mind. All these beings entered the room. All these beings, they were like weirdly dressed clown type beings and animals, and they were just in the room and they were harassing me, touching me in my chest, and they were just making gestures and I finally was able to. They finally went away. It seemed like it was 5 or 10 minutes that went on, then I had to drive like an hour and a half to work. I said, "Oh my God, am I going insane?"
But actually, I
So,
think what she's asking more is why we wrote the book now,
well,
or why we're doing this now.
the impetus was I started doing research seriously back around then. I
Mm.
saw a psychic, and then when Leslie and I got together, we were doing some of our own Kundalini raising work, and I taught her Tai Chi, and she started having some things happen too, like clairaudience. And
Right.
at this point, I just wanted to get to the bottom of things.
Mm.
About 20 years ago, I wanted to find the answers. I wanted
And
to find out what was going on.
and then when I saw my first UFO, I'm the writer in the family. I was a journalist for 18 years, and Stephen is and I wrote the book together, but I did more of the lion's share of the writing, and except for his personal stories that
And my
he
research.
included, and but our research is together, and our theories are developed together. But when I saw my first UFO, and that was almost 20 years ago, that's about when I started thinking we should write a book about this, and that's probably when it started. And then in 2016, the Hiawatha asteroid impact crater was discovered under the Hiawatha Glacier in northern Greenland. And we knew that that asteroid impact had happened because a lot of evidence was pointing towards it, but nobody could find the crater, and it's because it was under the ice sheet. And just with the recent, shrinking of the ice sheet in northern Greenland, they were able to discover the crater. And that has a lot to do with our theories as to what's going on. And so as soon as that was discovered, I said, now we can publish. Now we can write the book and publish.
Yeah, we already had heard about the nanodiamonds in the
Uccello Horizon.
horizon.
This is big news, actually. 13,000 years ago, this asteroid hit, and mainstream science wasn't believing it because nobody could find the crater. But now that it has been found, we believe this is the cause of the Great Flood. And the mythologies about the Great Flood. There's actually 1,200 separate cultures worldwide that have a flood myth in their most ancient lore, pointing to a shared experience of some kind, worldwide shared experience of some kind. And 13,000 years ago makes sense because that's about when our history begins. Human history doesn't go back before 13,000
Yeah.
years.
Since the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, which is between 12 and 13,000
That's
years
the
old.
oldest thing found so
That's
far.
what we know so far.
So human history doesn't predate the flood. And I think because of how destructive the flood would have been. We're talking about 1,000-foot high tsunamis that would have gone worldwide and scraped our society off the face of the earth. Whatever we had going was kind of laid waste back then.
Yes, and this is the Ucello, right?
Yes, and
Yeah.
the 13,000-year-old soil has a stripe in it on 10 different countries, 4 continents, called the Ucello Horizon. That's it's all charcoal, like the whole place was on fire at the same time, and that makes sense with air bursts in an asteroid coming through the atmosphere. It causes these air bursts that would fire, that would cause the forest
All the
catch on
forests in the
fire.
northern hemisphere would have been on fire at the same time.
And then the layer of soil above that, laid down after, was the Younger Dryas boundary, showing a drastic climate upheavals for about 1,000 years after. So we knew that the crater was somewhere, but it was just finally discovered, and a lot of our theories clicked into place at that point.
Yes.
So going back to the aliens, it sounds like you said, that they have protective feelings, I guess, towards the family, and yet
Yes.
it's scary too. Can you go into the more of the scary part? I would feel like
Sure.
if my memories were being wiped away and I didn't have any
Oh,
control, it'd be scary too.
the scary part, yeah. The night before the thing with the blue white being, the night before I was sleeping in my usual bedroom, I was on the bottom bunk and I was awakened by a
Like
sound
a
in
weird
the air.
ringing type sound.
And by the hallway, the kitchen light was on, so I could kind of look from my room down the hallway, and you know, I didn't see any like bugs or anything like that could have, or a fan. So I went back to try to go back to sleep, rolled on my left hand side, and then the bottom of my bed was pushed twice from the base of the bed, just pushed twice, kind of gently. So I thought, oh, well, I live in California, maybe it's an earthquake. I'm trying to rationalize this, okay? Trying to rationalize. So then I continue to like try and go to sleep, and then it pushes harder twice again. I says, okay, I'm getting a little worried here. And then the third time it pushed harder. And then after that, I got 3 distinct taps on my right shoulder. That's like an index finger of somebody. Tap, 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 right on my right shoulder. At this point, I'm aggravated and scared. So I rolled over and I just said, "What?" You know, because I was literally getting scared. So, and it wasn't visible. And then I don't know what I do. And I don't know what happened after that.
Another blackout right after
Yeah.
that.
Not immediately. I think I lay back down, but then I can't remember. I would have told my dad. My dad had his closet doors open and close on him one night during this time period. And then like one night, my dad heard this silver bell being rung inside the wall by the fireplace about 9 o'clock at night. And he came into my room and said, "Stephen, I must be hearing things." And I said, "I'm hearing a silver bell." So I came into the room and said, "Sure enough, it's a silver bell being rung inside the wall." Then I got my sister. My sister at this point in her life, she didn't want to have anything to do with this kind of stuff. She was kind of like a born again Christian, and she didn't want to be thinking about the spiritual stuff. And yes, that's a silver bell. We all recognize it. It went on for about 15 minutes.
And didn't it simultaneously cause the phone to ring at your other
Oh,
house?
yeah. At the same time, we found out the next day that 350 miles away at the house my dad and I were building, my brother and my mom were living there in Sonora, California. And my brother was in the room with my mom, and she picked up the phone. He said the phone never rang, but this is the same time when the silver bell was going on. She may have heard the silver bell as she heard it, heard it ring, and some voice on the other end said, "I am the invisible on Beachy." Now that could have been O'Glegley, I don't know, but she said, "I'm the invisible." This happened simultaneously. This is type of stuff you don't really tell people because they think, you're making it up or you're nuts, So
one thing we discovered as soon as we started doing our serious research about 20 years ago, when I saw the first UFO, we discovered quickly that theories about UFOs and abductions were different than the facts. They weren't aligning. And one of the things, the theories were saying that, oh, aliens are just interested in us, scientific curiosity. They just want to take a few little samples of a smattering of humanity just for scientific purposes. But what we discovered instead, this this phenomenon is almost entirely a Caucasian phenomenon. 94.6% of abductees are Caucasian. And so and we only make up 16% of the population. So they're not taking a cross section of humanity as far as.
That's not their main purpose, no.
And then they keep taking the same person again and again until, like I said before, then they start taking the children and the grandchildren and the great grandchildren in the phenomenon. So what they do is they find a genetic strain they like and they keep preying on that particular family. And I make the analogy like a cow. The farmer has a cow. He abducts the cow from the field every morning, takes it into his barn and removes the milk, and then puts the cow back out to generate more milk. And he protects the cow. He doesn't want his cow killed by wolves, so he protects his cows from the wolves. So it's not so much that they're protecting us, I think, because they deeply care about us. I think it's just that they find a strain of DNA that they like, and they don't want to lose that particular strain.
There might be a little care in there.
Yeah, some people we've talked to report that, I call it a victimization. They've been victims of the abduction phenomenon because it's a traumatic experience. And poor Philip, his brother, never lived a normal life and ended up committing suicide and killing his mother at the same time.
Yeah, but he did. He on his 51st birthday, he killed both his cats first. Then he took a shotgun to my mom, and then to himself. In 2017, we're still getting over that. My dad had just died 2 months before that. So
and I think that the death of his father
they were
only increased the trouble in his mind.
They were all living together at the house that we built in Sonora, California.
But we attribute a lot of this to the trauma, the early trauma of the abduction phenomenon. He was quite terrified. Like he said, Stephen said, Philip slept in his closet for 2 years of his childhood because he was frightened of the little men that would come.
And he saw once. He told me he saw 2 white UFOs outside of his bedroom window when he was 16.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you say to the people like Stephen Greer who think that they are benevolent and that we should be calling to them, and that's a good thing?
Yeah, we've heard that kind of thing from people, and we don't recommend contact with them. It's not fun. Betty and Barney Hill reported a searing pain when they had their samples taken. Like, they're not even using anesthetic on people when they stick needles in them to extract eggs or sperm. And we also believe that sometimes they take people and don't put them back. We think some of the abductees it depends on what they need. Let's say they need a human brain for their experiment. Well, they're not going to put that person back. That person's dead. And there's a lot of missing people, and in Alaska particularly. Now, Alaska, of course, is a treacherous place. Some of them could be eaten by bears or killed by avalanches. But there are 16,000 missing persons
in the past
Alaska,
25 to 30 years.
In the past 30 years.
And just some that are just so unexplainable. So
yeah, just like a guy just was there and then suddenly not there kind of thing. And Alaska is a huge hotbed of UFO activity. There are at least 2 underground alien bases in Alaska that we know of.
Mount Hayes,
possibly more. Mount Hayes is one, and the Black Pyramid is a separate base about 100 miles away from there. So, and people are constantly seeing UFO activity up there.
But benevolence may be part of who they are. We see them as being more like distant cousins that broke off from us about 13,000 years ago. Going back to the Great Flood, all the flood myths have one thing in common: pre-knowledge. They were told ahead of time that there was going to be a winter coming that you've never seen before.
Or a flood.
Or a flood.
A deluge. And they're all told, either, depending on where they were, they would be warned either it's time to build an ark, or go to very high ground, or dig in underground in an underground city, like in Turkey.
Like in Derinkuyu, yeah.
Derinkuyu area.
Very advanced. We would have trouble doing that today, the way they did it. It's amazing structure. And we also know that our ancestors had a phenomenal use of rock and metallurgy that we don't have today. I mean, you look at Sacsayhuaman, these things they're built to be earthquake proof forever. They are just completely impervious to that because the way
Yes.
they were built.
And we now know for a fact that mainstream archaeology is very slow to change their theories because they have to then refute what they already have been, theorizing and say, oops, we were wrong. This is true now. So it takes them a long time with a lot of evidence to change their minds. But we now know for a fact that all of the structures in Peru and Bolivia were built by a culture much, much older than the Inca. They finally, under one of the big pyramids, they found some grass netting that was there to help support a little bit of earthquake damage that had happened. And the grass netting has been carbon dated to 5,000 years ago. So we now know for a fact that there was a pyramid city building culture living in South America 5,000 years ago, of which we know zero.
Yeah. What do you think the U.S. disclosure last summer about UFOs or UAPs is real? What do you think that's about? Why are they coming out now? And what do you think the
Because everybody has a phone, camera on their hip.
Yeah, they can't hide it as easy anymore. But for 80 years, I mean, in the first chapter of our book, we had to assume that people would pick up the book that knew nothing about UFOs. So the first chapter is like a crash course in UFO history of
No
the
pun
US.
intended.
And the second chapter is about the recent disclosures. And the recent disclosures, it happened with Luis Elizondo. He was head of ATIP, and he released do you remember that New York Times story that came out in 2017 where he said, yes, this is a real phenomenon, and he released the three famous videos now.
The Go Fast Gimbal and the Tic Tac.
And the TikTok videos. At that point, there was a shift in the disclosure policy of the U.S. government. Before that, for 80 years, they just lied, stonewalled us. Oh no, it's swamp gas, it's mass hysteria, it's a weather balloon, lie,
Yeah.
lie.
Most famously 1969 when they shut down Project Blue Book.
Yeah,
and
but
they said, no, we didn't find anything.
Yeah, the Project Blue Book shut down, but then they just created another secret organization that studied it. They just changed the name, and the funding would be different every time. But then when Luis Elizondo released it, because he was head of their secret program, they couldn't very well lie about it anymore. And they said they did release a statement with the full length videos to the public. And they said, this is a real phenomenon, but we don't know what it is. And of course, they're lying to us again. They know full well what it is because they have crashed ships. They have dead alien bodies. They have maybe some live alien bodies, we think. So they're still lying to us, and they haven't disclosed anything else since then as far as releasing more videos to the public. But that disclosure hearing that happened over the summer was quite interesting. We listened to every word 3 times. And it wasn't news to us that there were crash ships or biologics. But what was news to us is the pilots were saying that these incidents where they're following our military happen every single time they go out on maneuvers all over the world. They're dogging us. So there should be a lot more videos to disclose. So the government is still pretty closed off about releasing stuff to us. But they have changed their policy a little bit, admitting that it's real now.
Somebody's listening and they have paranormal PTSD. You got any suggestions on what they might do?
Yeah.
PTSD, well, see a counselor, number one, that is open to the idea to start with, and not just think that, have their own preconceived ideas. I think it's important to do that, and certainly maybe get a group and talk about your experiences, kind of like an AA thing, the 12-step thing, 12 steps to getting over PTSD from. And that the thing is, we can't do much about it.
No, we would have loved to help Philip more, with his trauma, but we weren't able to do so. But I would say any kind of PTSD therapy that would work the same way.
Yeah.
And that they should definitely seek therapy rather than just wall themselves off or something.
Yeah, and I've been recently trying to approach one. I'm still having things happen to this day. Just recently,
Yeah.
well, I have the ability to get out of my body for one thing. I got out of my body about 2 weeks ago or so, and I got out of bed and I was going to go to the bathroom, and I didn't realize I got out of my body. I went to the door that was closed and I couldn't open the door.
Because he
And
wasn't physically
I
there.
wasn't physically there. So I went back and looked at my body. I said, "Uh-oh, did I die? Did I just die?" So I said, "Oh no, I just got out of my body." So I went back into my body. Then I was able to get up and go out. And and a couple nights after that, I went to bed and it felt like somebody had gotten in bed right next to me, and just like somebody lay down in bed next to me. And I said, "Okay, what do you want?" And I just ignored it. But it wasn't done with me. So when I was going to get up in the morning, I was fully awake, laying on my back, and a voice from my right side said into my ear very clearly, "Husband." It sounded slightly Asian actually, the voice, but it was feminine. And Leslie never calls me husband. Plus, she wasn't in bed.
We should
And-
explain that when we were doing we worked for a while that raising our Kundalini energies and opening our chakras. You do that through meditation work and chanting. And as we were doing that, we both gained the ability to astral project. And when I was doing it, astral projection was fun. I was able to go scuba diving and visit Egypt, and I always had a good time. But whenever Stephen gets out of his body, it seems like they're waiting on the other side of the veil to harass him. Every time he gets out of his body, there's like a being. I'm not every time, but frequently there's a being in the room with him. Like the few months ago, there was a tall black being with yellow eyes, and
Mhm.
another time. So, in other words, I feel like he's still being harassed on the psychic plane or the astral plane. And we'd love, if anyone has advice on how to get out from under this someday, we'd love him to have a good night's sleep for once. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm not quite as afraid to go to sleep anymore as I was. I'm just kind of trying to confront it more. Like when that black being was in the room, I said, what do you want? What do you want? I hear that people say, "Oh, you're not supposed to give them any type of permission," but I said, "Okay, I honestly would like to know. The curiosity part of me being human would like to know what they have wanted with me. I've always been very intuitive. That's why I was very good acupuncturist and the Tai Chi teacher. I inherited that from my mom's side at least. So I've always had that ability and had that voice. I've also had precognitive things happen to me in my life,
Mhm.
and one I predicted. I saw who was going to be the president a year and a half before the person even ran for being president. And I told Leslie, said, "You won't believe who's going to become the next president."
I'm a witness.
And this happened, 20 some odd 25 years ago or so.
I do believe there's a connection, a psychic connection to the UFO phenomenon. Perhaps it's part of their criteria that they like people that have some psychic ability
Yes.
as part of their choice as to why they take them. Certainly, it's true in Stephen's family.
Yeah, I've had the clear audience and yeah, I was astral projecting well before I met Leslie, and I just kind of stopped doing it. Then when we started working together and she started having fun with it, then it's actually very simple to do. It's just getting to the right
Conscious state.
conscious state. It really is. You got to slow your brainwave levels down to about a delta, about 4 to 7 cycles per second, and let your body become glued to the floor.
What was that great book you read that
It's
did
called
that?
The Art of Astral Projection.
So he read it, and the first night he popped out of his body. Then I read it, and the first night I popped out of my body. So I really recommend that book if somebody wants to learn how
Oh,
to do this.
it absolutely works. It has to do with your breathing, that you do an inhale of 3, then an exhale of 5, then an inhale of 5 and an exhale of 3, and then you visualize your chakras and you're spinning your chakras from the first chakra all the way up to the seventh chakra, and you relax doing that, but you focus on the breathing.
It's called the hypnagogic and the hypnopompic state. It's the state of between full wakefulness and full sleep. Where have you ever partially awakened and not been able to move yet? that you're kind of
No.
paralyzed, it's a lot of people are frightened by that state.
Yeah,
But
they call it sleep paralysis.
when you're in that state, that's when you can get out of your body. You can actually make a conscious decision, say, I'd like to get out of my body. And the next thing you know, your astral body will float up out of your physical
It's a really
body.
cool feeling when it
Yeah.
the one time I did it was I was 17, and it was on a Sunday afternoon. I just was really tired because I had done a lot of running and a lot of working, and was still in school. So I was reading the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien, and it's kind of boring. So I put it down. I said, maybe I'll practice, see if I can get into an astral state. So I was laying on my parents' bed, and they were in the living room talking and doing their thing, and so my body literally became like it felt like it was glued to the bed, and I was conscious as, okay, I'm going to pop out, and I popped out and went right up the ceiling by the swamp cooler fan. I was hovering up the ceiling there, and I said, "This is cool. I'm going to go and prove to my parents that this stuff is real. I'm going to go spy on them, and see what they're saying." So I start floating out down the hallway feet first, and because I wasn't skilled at doing this at the time. So I said, okay, maybe I should, turn around and look at myself, or like, stand up. And then I started to get this weird vibrating feeling. And then I felt like I was being like dragged back through mud in the air. Like I was being dragged back slow into my body. And then I popped back in my body.
When I
And
first got out, suddenly I was at the cottage cheese ceiling, looking like only 6 inches away. And I was so surprised. I went, wow. And then slammed right back into my body. I was only out for like a second, but you can't unmake it happen. Once you get there, you said, wow, it really is real.
and then I
You
think
really
the
can do it.
next time you went over the house, right?
Yeah. Next time I came out of my body, I came out with such force. I went through the ceiling and about a mile up into the sky, and I had an enormous view of the entire
With the
city
hills, yeah.
underneath of us. Yeah. It's an interesting phenomenon, and you get better at it as you do it, because people are a little afraid of it. Oh, well, what if my body gets separated and get lost or whatever? But the opposite is true. It's hard to stay out as a beginner. And your body, there's this silver cord they talk about that connects the two of you. And if their body hears anything it doesn't like, it'll jerk that cord, and it's like a good watchdog, and you'll end up slamming right back into your body. So, but after a while, you can start moving the astral body separate from the physical body, and that's when you can actually start to
And use mental commands, like you say,
yeah.
you don't try and move your arm or whatever. You just
At first, you'd have to just use mental commands. I want to float over here. I want to float, because when you try and move your astral body separate from your physical body, sometimes it almost moves the physical body, and that causes you to slam right back in. It takes a little practice to get good at it.
yeah.
But it's a strange thing, and I began to hear into the astral realm in the waking state.
Yeah, during the day.
It's called clairaudience. And frankly, that's the thing that creeped me out. Hearing a voice right behind me, and there's nothing there. That kind of bothered me, and I decided to just give up the whole thing after that. But we can testify to it being a real thing that people can do. And it was profoundly life-changing for me, because before that I didn't know. Do I have a soul? I don't know. Maybe I have a soul, maybe I don't. But when your soul separates from your physical body and goes traveling, you're pretty much sure you have a soul after that. And I felt comforted, I do have a soul. There is one in there.
I appreciate you
Somewhere in
guys
here.
sharing your stories, especially because depending upon the family and the culture you live in, I'm sure for some people this is very, very strange. So I appreciate your frankness and your openness and sharing this. And so can you tell me where people can find your book, so if they want to know more?
Sure. The book is called Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw. It's available on Amazon and on Ingram as well. Ingram bookstores prefer to use Ingram. So we're on both. And we also have an Instagram account and Facebook account where we're trying to publish a lot of stories and histories. And that handle is leslie.shaw.author. Leslie spelled Leslie, and Shaw, Shaw. And we're on Facebook and Instagram, like I say. And we have a website, whotheyarebook.com. And there they can find some of my blogs and
Some
Stephen has some blogs
and some animations too, right?
and also some excerpts, stuff like that from the book. And
That
that's it.
if people have a story that you'd be interested in hearing it?
Absolutely.
Okay,
So
awesome.
please, yes, message me on Instagram is the best way right now. So
Okay.
visit our Instagram account, look at some of our posts, and share your story.
Awesome.
And
That's
share there, and then maybe send me an email address, and we can communicate easier via email, of course. And I guess I give our email. It's leslieshaw459@gmail.com.
thank
We're
you
happy
so
to
much. That's a
happy to
wonderful.
communicate with people.
Yeah, we're currently working with two people in this general area that have some very odd things that have been happening.
One of them is an
recently.
abduction victim too.
One's
Yeah.
an abduction victim, and another one has caught a bunch of stuff on her ring camera.
Ring camera has wild stuff on her ring camera.
Another one has her crystals and her stones growing in her house and around her house, and she's got pictures of them. This is before and this is after.
It's
So
really bizarre.
it's odd.
She's 70 years old, and so not really a viable candidate anymore for being physically taken. But just like Stephen, as soon as she goes into the dream state, she has this spirit guide named Sumi, and she's painted hundreds of paintings of this lady named Sumi, who is essentially a gray alien. And sometimes she has a halo of light and wispy hair, but mostly she's a gray alien with the big black eyes. And it's almost like they befriended each other and they're still communicating. She thinks physically. She thinks she's actually still being contacted physically. I'm not sure if that's the case or if it's like more psychic communication like Stephen is still experiencing. But it's when they're done with you physically, they're not done with you.
Yes.
That much we know.
And they do change your perspective on life, that's for sure. I made different decisions in my life based upon some of the things that have happened to me. So yeah,
Awesome.
they change your brain wiring a bit too, I think.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here and sharing your story.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
having us. It was fun.